All right. It is officially 9:30, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Digital Leadership Academy. I am Caitlin, and today we are talking about crisis communications. The focus of this webinar will be to help you gain some tools and insights so that when a crisis hits, you have the tools to communicate effectively. So before we get started, I will go ahead and introduce myself and then introduce my colleagues that are joining me today. Um, like I said, I'm Caitlin. I'm an account lead at the Impact Group. I work primarily with school districts, but a lot of different organizations across the public sector. Um, to help support their communications efforts. Something I'm really passionate about is bringing my knowledge and creativity to help organizations and leaders help solve their communications problems. So joining me today is Rory and Sarah, my fellow account leads. Sarah, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Sarah Lambert, also an account lead at the Impact Group. Before joining the team, I spent 15 years in advertising agencies and then 5 years on the retail marketing side of the world. What I love most is blending strategy and relationship building, as well as project management and helping my clients achieve all their goals.
Rory, you're up.
And as Caitlin said, my name is Rory Wilson. I am an account lead, and I have been with the Impact Group for 4 years. And in that time, I've worked alongside many organizations through a variety of crises. So if you oversee a school district, municipal services, or any other public agency, odds are that you have also encountered a crisis situation within your organization. And if you haven't, you are certainly one of the lucky few. But for anyone who has experienced a crisis, you can agree that there is no good time for a crisis to occur. So let's picture this. Say you're a superintendent on the eve of the first day back to school from your winter break, and you're alerted of a threat circulating on social media. And you need to evaluate and address that threat immediately to determine if it's safe for your students and staff to come back to school. Effective crisis communication not only minimizes reputational damage, but it can also strengthen your public trust and loyalty. So let's just real quick take a poll from everyone online with us today. Head over to the chat and leave a comment for us to let us know what your confidence level is right now in handling crisis messaging. Let us know if you are a seasoned pro who's navigated crisis waters before, or if you're new to this arena, just let us know in the comments. We know crisis communication is really a vital skill for all leaders. So no matter where you are in your level of experience with a crisis, we want to be able to empower you to lead with confidence through any crisis that comes your way. And today, as Caitlin shared, we are going to give you some actionable strategies to help you transform any of these challenges into an opportunity to help safeguard your organization's reputation and also connect more deeply with your community. So we're going to talk first about why crisis communication is so critical. But first, let's define what exactly crisis communication is. So this is the process of managing the flow of information before, during, and after a crisis. And it involves a strategic and a coordinated approach to communicating with all of your various audiences, and that includes everyone from staff to the media to the general public, to mitigate negative consequences of a crisis and maintain trust in your organization. So why is this so important? Well, the goal of crisis communication is to provide accurate, timely, and transparent information to your stakeholders. And this will really help you address their concerns, and it also demonstrates your commitment to resolving the crisis. So by doing this, you can minimize the damage to your brand, maintain credibility, and emerge from the crisis with your reputation still intact. So effective crisis communication can even turn a negative situation into an opportunity to help you build stronger relationships and improves your brand image. So let's talk through what this looks like using the example that I shared a little bit earlier. Imagine there is this threat that is circulating on social media. If you get out in front of that situation and communicate with your stakeholders before those rumors start to grow, you can take control of the narrative. And this gives you the opportunity to share the facts, to tell your community what is true, and share how you are addressing the situation to ensure safety for everyone involved. An early response shows that you are committed to transparency, and it also gives you the opportunity to really resolve a lot of your stakeholder concerns. And if you can show your community that they can look to you first for accurate and transparent information, then you can help cultivate a reputation for your brand that is really built on trust. So let's take just another quick poll in the chat for anyone who would like to let us know. We just want to hear what your biggest concerns are regarding crisis communication. So while you are leaving your comments there, I'm going to turn it over to Caitlin, and she's going to discuss some tips for proactive planning.
Thanks so much, Rory. It looks like we have varying levels of crisis communications experience with us today, which is awesome. One of the first and most important steps for dealing with a crisis is preparation and making sure that you're prepared for potential crisis events. You have a team in place to respond to that crisis when it happens, and the proper protocols in place to get that communication out to your stakeholders. So step one is identifying those potential crises. Different organizations might face different crises. A lot of times in the public sector, it might look like contentious policy decisions or safety concerns, social media threats. While you can't necessarily prepare for the specific details of those events, just being aware that those are potential issues that you could face puts you ahead of the game and helps you prepare your messaging and how you might respond should your organization face one of those issues. And then step two is designating your crisis team. Clarity on roles is so important for any organization, any team, but particularly in crisis response. Your team members need to know, who's writing the message, who's going to make approvals, and making sure that those roles are clear helps with logistics. And when each person is assigned to a role, your team can act quickly and effectively when that event occurs. Some examples of those roles might be media liaison, someone who is there to deal directly with the media, start building some of those important relationships so that you have a positive rapport if something were to happen with reporters. And then a spokesperson, sometimes the superintendent or maybe a mayor, your CEO, someone who is that front and forward facing individual for your organization to help deliver that crisis response. And then the last step of being prepared is developing those clear communication protocols. So once you have the message, once you have your team in place, how will it get out? Who is sending the press release? How are you communicating with your employees? How are you communicating with your community members? Is that an email? Is that a social media post? Kind of understanding what platforms you have in place and your ability to get that message out quickly to different stakeholders. Something that we like to say at the Impact Group is tell the truth, tell it first, and tell it fast. So thank you, Michael. I can see your thumbs up there. But you have to be, your platforms have to be prepared, and the individuals in your role have to know, the who's and what's to be able to do those three things. Something else important that we often don't think about is your frontline staff, people who are answering the phone, um, people who might be greeting people as they come in to an office or a building. What information are you sharing and preparing them with so they know how to respond to phone calls or inquiries or even people coming in and asking questions? All right, so we've covered getting prepared. Sarah, do you want to talk to us about some of the core elements of trust and transparency?
Sure. Thanks, Kate. Okay, so we're going to continue our discussion and take a closer look at how organizations can put all of these principles into action. So whether you're leading a school district, a city government, or a community organization, the way you communicate in a crisis can make all the difference in maintaining public confidence. So let's dive in. So as we already discussed, transparency builds trust. And in moments of crisis, openly sharing facts and updates can calm fears, counter misinformation, and reinforce credibility. The key principles of transparent communication is what we'll review now. Obviously, transparency. This is providing accurate, timely updates to maintain control of the narrative. Withholding crucial information can lead to speculation and misinformation. So a pro tip here, go beyond just sharing the facts, clearly explain the why behind the decisions. Providing this context can help reinforce trust, reduce confusion, and also demonstrate accountability. Timeliness. Update your stakeholders regularly, even if it's a small update, even if there's not much to update. Showing this diligence and reassuring your audience that the situation is being actively managed is super important. An idea here would be to set a briefing schedule, even if, like I said, if there's no major update, just keeping everyone informed. Consistency. So here, super important, ensuring your message aligns across all platforms. Mixed signals create confusion and, again, weaken your credibility. So, for example, if a statement is being sent out via press release, ensure that, if applicable, social media and your internal communications reflect those same key points so that everyone has the same message. Empathy. So here, show compassion, acknowledge the impact of the crisis, demonstrate your commitment to solutions, use human-centered language like we understand how difficult this is and we are committed to making things right. Next, action-oriented communication. Again, transparency is about honesty paired with solutions. Outline the steps being taken to resolve any issues and then also to prevent future occurrences. For example, if you're addressing a school safety concern, communicate what happened, the immediate actions taken to ensure student safety, and any long-term improvements being made to prevent similar incidents in the future. Accessibility. Ensure this information is easy to find. Offer clear points of contact and direct stakeholders to official platforms for updates, whether it's your website, etc. One effective strategy that we recommend is the safety sandwich approach. So here you start with a strong, reassuring statement to reinforce stability and control. Then you layer in transparency and accountability, clearly explaining what happened, the steps being taken to address it. And finally, close by reiterating your commitment to resolution, offering solutions, and expressing gratitude. This structure keeps your communication clear, balanced, and focused on building trust. Thank you. There's a graphic Kate just dropped in the chat if you want to take a look at the safety sandwich. Okay, so now let's put these principles into action and see how transparency builds trust in a real-world scenario. One of the most well-known examples of a brand successfully rebuilding trust is Tylenol's response to a major crisis they had in the 80s. When tampered Tylenol capsules laced with cyanide were found on store shelves, public fear skyrocketed and sales plummeted. So how did they regain consumer confidence? They acted with transparency, urgency, and accountability. They immediately pulled all Tylenol products off the market and then launched a nationwide awareness campaign, introducing tamper-evident packaging and setting a new industry standard for safety. The result was what seemed like a brand-ending crisis became a case study in trust recovery. After investing over $100 million in their response, Tylenol not only bounced back, but reaffirmed its status as the leading over-the-counter pain reliever. So the takeaway here, transparency is not just about sharing facts. It's about showing action, demonstrating accountability, and putting people first. When trust is broken, it can be rebuilt, but only with a commitment to clear, honest, and proactive communication. So remember, transparency and trust are built over time, but the right communication strategies will keep your community informed, engaged, and confident in your leadership.
Thanks, Sarah. All right, so we still have about 15 minutes left of our webinar. So we will open up the floor for questions. I've been trying to respond to some of you in the comments, but if there's particular issues or things you'd like to talk about, go ahead and unmute and let's chat. All right. Well, I think we could talk about social media in particular because there were lots of comments and about social media in particular. And I think this is one of the toughest areas in crisis communication because it does spiral out of control so quickly. You know, especially negativity, that seems to be where that kind of grows legs and takes on a life of its own. Um, Generally, we like to recommend keeping crisis response off of social media. You know, your platform should be celebrating the work that you do every day, the awesome and incredible stories that you have to tell. And crisis response works better in an email or a press release or someplace offline. Occasionally, you might need to respond to something on social media. And best practice would be to try to take that offline, whether it's getting them to reach out to you via phone, taking them to uh, like your website to review a statement. I don't know, Rory or Sarah, if you have any other thoughts on social media.
Yeah, Caitlin, I think a lot of the points that you shared are really well said. And social media is such a gray area because for a lot of communications, I mean, social media is a big driver. It's a space where people are extremely interactive. And in some communities, that's the first place people go to look. But it's important to keep in mind that, there are other official channels that you can employ to share messages, especially when they're of a serious nature. And just recognizing really what is the most appropriate place to share a message with your stakeholders. And also keeping in mind, is there, sometimes in order where you might need to communicate with stakeholders first. In some situations, you may need to have an internal brief with your staff before you escalate things out to families or community members. And eventually that conversation might find its way to social media. But a lot of times there's either internal conversations that might need to happen first, and then reserving that social space for really that, social element.
I've got the privilege of working with Rory, Caitlin, and Sarah quite a bit. I have a question for you guys. We a lot of times we get in a situation where people the gut sense is this is going to blow over. Let's just put our heads down, and maybe people won't notice, and maybe it's going to blow over. And it's a very natural reaction because we really genuinely want it to blow over. When that occurs, what is generally our advice in that circumstance?
Yeah, I think generally it's probably not going to blow over, right? I think 9 times out of 10, um, even as uncomfortable it is as it is, getting out in front of it, getting your message out there is going to end up being more helpful than putting it off and hoping for it to blow over.
Hey, Caitlin. This is Michael. I apologize for jumping in. I'm an old friend of Tom's from a long time ago. Good to see you, Tom. But a wise person once told me, if you put your head down and you wait for it to blow over, you need to be ready for when it blows up, because it will blow up if you're just putting your head in the sand and hoping you avoid it. The trickiest part, and I don't know if you guys have a golden rule on this, is, for me at least, when to share, because I believe in telling our story as quickly as possible. We're our own reporter, but unfortunately, some years back, we had a student who did some self-harm. And like you had mentioned, social media is there. The students were in the building. They knew that I knew social media was going to get a hold of it. Yes, it happened outside of the building, but I wanted the students to hear it from a human, someone they trusted, someone they knew. So that was a lot of difficult decisions needed to happen, like super quick. And I know there's no go-to, but what comes into your mind as professionals? Someone who's not a professional, obviously, I just do what I can. But in a situation like that, is there something that comes to mind?
I think so. I think your gut was right? Talk to them in person, get the students together, kind of set the tone with them as human beings as quickly as you can. In a situation like that, communication has to be so balanced because you don't want to kind of communicate and then it have impacts for other students, and then students start, that sort of their own self-harm situation. But generally, goodness, I feel like if you have enough facts to start communicating, it's better to communicate as quickly as you can. And to your point, I don't know that there is a golden rule. It is kind of nuanced, and Tom Speaks talks a lot about the gut feeling. And sometimes you have to kind of let your gut feeling lead you on the timing of that communication. Rory or Sarah, I don't know if you.
Yeah, I can chime in a little bit. Really, when we think about that nuance, it's really digging in to that empathy piece. And in a lot of these situations, sometimes you don't want to get swept up in the I have to respond immediately and get lost in the nuance of the sensitivity surrounding the situation. Or these are in a lot of cases, these are people's lives. Where a lot of us work directly with people or kids, and there could be a ripple effect to the communications that go out. So sometimes, taking a step back to look at it from that empathetic lens can be really important. But it really is just a balance, because at the same time, you want to make sure that you are the one to share the facts, versus letting something, take on a life of its own without your voice added into it.
I was going to say, and I agree, I think oftentimes when I'm thinking through, even if it's a reply or, a crisis and working on content, to put on that hat of how would you like to be? How would you like to hear news as a parent or, as a employee? How would you want to be? How would you want to hear this news? When would you want to hear this news? And I think it's important, really, I love what you said, Rory, with the empathy part, because it really does help inform even writing something like a crisis message and having that bit of kindness of, people are going to naturally want to know what's going on. Can you tell them what's going on in a way that helps them deal with the situation, and move on from there? So I think important, all the words, being empathetic, having kindness, making sure it's timely. I really do think is super important as well. And I know we always hesitate. You're like, I don't want to, you don't want to get out there with the message. But I think one thing I've learned with working with these two leads as well as Tom is it's always beneficial. I won't say always, it's beneficial to get that message out in a timely manner.
Yeah, that's great advice, Sarah. And I love the idea of like putting on your hat and thinking about how you would want to receive the message and how you would want to be communicated with. I think that's great advice as you think about responding to a crisis or even just communicating in general. Okay, so we're at the end of our webinar. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure to share our insights and talk with you today. Before we go, I would encourage you to take a small step today, whether that's identifying some of the potential crises that you might face or thinking about who your crisis team will be. Taking that small step to get started kind of makes that overwhelming feeling a little bit easier. And just a note about the Impact Group, we are here to support you. We work in crisis communications, culture development, and strategic planning. And if you are looking for more information or want to have a further conversation, I would encourage you to visit our website and reach out to us. So thanks again, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Thursday.
Hey, Caitlin, real quick before we wrap up, can we answer Todd's question in there? What's a good rationale counter to this statement? How many phone calls or emails have we received? Let's say we only get 20 messages from stakeholders out of 10,000 parents. I've always believed for every person who did call or email, 24 others did not. Do you or the three of you or Tom have any perspective on that one?
Yeah, is this, I'm like guessing questions about when you send a statement and you're getting the phone calls and the emails about the statement?
Or even a situation where maybe a statement hasn't gone out yet. And do you send one or not?
Yeah.
I think a piece of it is we'll hear from board members a lot of times, like the whole community is screaming about this, and we'll ask, they got 3 emails, so it's a matter of asking some probing question. Everybody's upset. Who's everybody? Nobody likes it. Who's nobody? So yeah, I think sometimes we got to ask questions, and then that's when you guys were talking earlier about social media. Sometimes it's every community has a couple usual suspects who generally are stinkers about everything. Is it those folks, or do you have a lot of people engaging who are really good folks? And so it's kind of like we were saying earlier, it's kind of a gut call, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think to Tom's point earlier too, if it is the question of, well, how many phone calls or emails have we gotten about this in contrast to sending out a statement? Get your statement out before you have a bunch of phone calls and emails to respond to.
I just want to say really quick, I don't know if you guys can hear me, and I know we're almost done, but just Worcester City School District works with the Impact Group, and what's great about it, just having been just a building administrator, principal, assistant principal, but like it's really awesome to have them as a layer of objectivity when you're trying to communicate something or you're in the middle of something really tough. And I don't actually do that. Our superintendent does the communications, but I know that's what he appreciates. And then I, as the communication director, will put out the follow-up wherever instructed, but it's just really awesome to have them to support because again, I can only speak from being a principal, but like when you're in it, sometimes those snap judgments are hard to make, and you are influenced by your community and the vocal minority that speak out. So I just want to, it's not a plug or I'm not advertising, but I just think for us, it's just wonderful to have this team to just bounce things off of. And I think our communication's been really strong because of it. And then also they helped us set up our calibration for communication. So how often are we putting things out? We have and I'm sure you all have this in your districts, but how often are we putting out building newsletters and district newsletters and social media, and our superintendent does a video to the staff every month. So like these forums of communication really help us to be consistent and transparent often, so that when we are putting out crisis communication, it's just another communication, if that makes sense. And that was all, the impact group really helped us through that process too. So I just wanted to say that out loud because we are very grateful.
Thank you, Shannon.
Shannon.
All right. I think we got all the questions. So thank you again for joining us. And we will send a recording in an email probably in about a week in case you want to look back and reference anything that we talked about.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Everyone.
Have a good day.
Bye.